All right. So welcome everybody to this episode of the Ninth Grade Experience podcast. We have a different kind of episode this week as we have some of our first non-freshman guests on. We have our first parent that's going to be on, and we have our first middle school student that's going to be on. But I think it's going to create a really good story here, telling a great tale for upcoming ninth graders, current ninth graders, and just anyone familiar with the Emmaus High School community overall. And I'm sure if you recognize him, you might not recognize him by his face without the mask on, but today we're going to talk to Zach Conner, who has for the last 3 years been the Emmaus Hornet. We're going to talk to his mom, Jen, and then we're going to talk to his brother, Andrew, who's in 8th grade at LMMS, who will be up at the high school next year. So we're going to talk to them about what it's been like going through Emmaus High School, some tips for ninth graders, and then what an 8th grader is looking forward to coming up to ninth grade. So everyone, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
So Zach, you've kind of become like a little mini Emmaus High School celebrity here. You've kind of had a lot of publicity with the Hornet. I remember I'm wearing my Out of the Hive 2018 shirt when you displayed the new costume. And, a lot of people kind of have heard your story from that point on, but, we've known each other for 4 years now. And I'm kind of we always ask our new guests on the podcast about what their ninth grade year was like. So we're not going to ask mom. Usually we ask the adults too, unless mom wants to talk about her ninth grade year, wherever she was a ninth grader at. But Zach, we'll ask you first. So what was your ninth grade year like at Emmaus High School? Now that in 3 short days from now, or when you listen to it today, you will be almost an official Emmaus High School graduate.
Well, if there's anything to sum up my ninth grade year, it was awful. So basically, I say awful because I couldn't connect with my peers, and I was depressed almost all the time. And, and people, sometimes they would poke fun at me and talk behind my back, and it just tore me apart.
And, we know now, like we see the story and where it came from, and mom, you might want to jump in with this one too, a little bit. Like, obviously we know the story a little bit because we've been working together for 4 years, but what was that like as a parent, like kind of watching that during the freshman year, and kind of how do you remember, how did you help Zach kind of get through that struggle during his ninth grade year?
Sure. It was heartbreaking to say the least, to know that, just the year prior, he was this happy, teenager, and to see some friendships kind of die off and sever pretty quickly, and to see how that had impacted him in a way that we didn't anticipate happening. So yeah, that was pretty heartbreaking. So Chris and I, my husband and I, had just truly encouraged Zachary, like, it will get better. Things will be okay. Like, look at you've made honor roll. Academically, Zachary has not struggled. And we're grateful for that as well. But that social connection, that ninth grade year, was pretty hard for him. So we just really encouraged him at the end of his ninth grade year. We had said to him, listen, you need to get involved. There's something there. Let's figure it out. And then summer happened. And that's all. We just kind of tried to be his positive light.
And it's an interesting story that you tell, because one of the things in working with Zach is that he always has done well academically. So we always think that when students are doing well academically, that they kind of have it all together. And then sometimes you don't really see the behind the scenes stuff, especially as a teacher, or maybe even, somebody in the building or a parent. Like, kind of sometimes we miss that, and we miss those things that are like, the real essences of like how high school students like kind of get acclimated to the high school and building those relationships. So it was never an issue academically for Zach, but behind the scenes, he had those kind of feelings and all those different things. So we always talk about getting involved and doing all of those sorts of things. So Zach, when your mom kind of approached you with the idea about getting involved at the end of your freshman year, what were you thinking, and what kind of things did you want to get yourself involved with?
I didn't really think that much of it until I saw the Twitter ad saying Hornet mascot wanted, and some of my family friends encouraged me as well, and like
To
one
get
to
involved.
get involved, yes. And I've never disclosed this before. One of my neighbors up the street was like, "If you become the school mascot, you're gonna be uber famous," and he was right.
Yeah, and that, and you saw that ad, I think people might have heard the story or background story of this, but you pursued that. You pursued it all yourself. Like, you went and you talked to the athletic director, the assistant athletic director. Like, you kind of were your own best advocate for this. You kind of, once you kind of decided that like this was something that you wanted to do, like you were the one that kind of drove the bus here. No pun intended. We know your mom drives the bus for this buses for school, but like you drove the bus on this like yourself. So what was it about this particular thing that really kind of, you talked about your freshman year trying to find that thing? Like, what was it about becoming the mascot that kind of was the thing that'd be like, yes, this is what I'm going to kind of do?
Well, when I put on that suit, it just transformed me into a completely different person. Like, I was happy, energetic, and all that good stuff. And, you know, and people in the crowds were happy, and this became more evident as time went on. Because at first, when I became the Hornet, I came back unknown because we haven't had a stable mascot for 2 years before that.
Yeah, because I don't remember like your freshman year. I don't remember there being like a visible Hornet mascot. So they, worked together to kind of revive the mascot. And I know your mom was pretty influential in kind of helping to revive the mascot as well too. So when you found that Zach was kind of interested in becoming the mascot, what was that like for you to kind of, now you saw that he identified a passion, and then what was it? I know you've been really gung ho about, fundraising and doing all the other stuff. But when you saw him actually find that thing, what did that feel like as a parent? And what was that kind of like, how did that make you feel, kind of that you maybe could see the beginnings of the, maybe a little bit of a change in him?
Sure. It was instant. He was happy that day. When Mr. Zimmerman contacted me, I was at work, and it was the second day of school, right?
Yeah, it
Of
was the
his
second
sophomore
day of
year.
school.
And, I get this phone call, and I see it's the school, and I'm at work, so I had to let it go to voicemail. So when I had that moment to listen to his message, I was like, why is the athletic director calling me? And I was kind of a little defensive, to be honest with you, because like, what happened? And that was kind of right away my thought went to, great, here we go. Like, what's happening here? And then he's not involved in sports. So again, why are you calling me? Like, what is this about? So when I called, Mr. Zimmerman had answered right away, and he said, "Oh, Zachary's okay. Everything's okay." And I was like, okay. I kind of put my guard down a little bit at that point. And then he had said to me, he goes, "We just interviewed Zach to be the mascot for our high school." And I was like, what? I literally went, what? And then he goes, "Yes, we just had him here." And you could hear over the phone the joy in Mr. Zimmerman's voice. Like, if there's anything that was carried over, it was that he truly was proud to have Zach represent EHS as well. And I was instantly brought to tears with that, because I knew in the end, if Zach had this, he would be okay, and things would be okay with Zach. And Mr. Zimmerman had said to myself and Zachary, "You could do as little or as much as you want." And Zach is a go big or go home kind of kid. Like, it's all or nothing with him. So that's just all kind of how it evolved into what it did.
So the first year when you were the mascot, you were still working with the old costume. You were kind of getting your footing on like what a mascot is like and all those different things. And I know like I posted the video of the night where you displayed the new Hornet costume, and I think it got over like 1,000 views on my Twitter, and like other people like picked it up a little bit. So what was that like the process like for you, Zach, of like that now you're like during your sophomore year into your junior year, like you've become the mascot, you've kind of got an identity, and you got the new mascot costume, and you got all this different stuff. What was that like for you kind of personally, knowing that like maybe you're kind of fitting in a little bit more and kind of overcoming that? Like, what was that like for you, not to just be the mascot, but for Zach, the person, like now I kind of have something that I belong to?
Well, for many years, I was known as that autistic kid in so-and-so's class, and it with the Hornet, in my life, it took that identity, that label away, and it made me as, Zach, the guy who dons the Emmaus High School mascot, the Hornet, running down the football field with the flag, and
it definitely took that label of autism away, not just in school but here at home as well. Having a child with special needs, regardless of where you are on the spectrum, regardless of the need, it's hard. So when this happened and he did become the Hornet, and we saw how much joy it brought to the community, it brought joy here to our home as well. And it did, Chris, it took that label of, oh my gosh, like Zach's autism is whatever, to, oh, here we go, we have an event to do. And it kind of gave us some normalcy in our life that we definitely didn't have.
So Andrew, to bring you back in for your first question here. So at that point, when Zach became the Hornet, you were going into 6th grade at LMMS. And what did you think about what your brother was doing at that point? Like, you had, obviously grown up with him, and you saw that, were like people starting to like say anything to you when you went into middle school? Were you like, oh my God, now my brother's the Hornet, what am I going to do? Like, what were you thinking kind of when you were entering into middle school?
Well, nothing really like that. I mean, I didn't really share it, and I don't think a lot of people knew that my brother was the mascot. If you later on during my 6th grade year, I started sharing that, oh yeah, my brother's the mascot, and I got a lot of questions about that kind of stuff, and I kind of kept it vague because I thought like Zach wasn't. I don't know. I thought Zach wasn't gonna like blow up as this huge celebrity. I thought it was gonna be just a little. It's like the little mascot community. It's like the little Emmaus Hornet High School mascot kind of thing. I didn't think it'd be just blow up like it did. Yeah.
Yeah. And then over the span of the 2 years, it most certainly has in the last 2 years. So Zach, what has been, what surprised you the most about what has kind of happened to you over the last 2 years in becoming the mascot? I know you've gotten a chance to go to a lot of cool places, meet with a lot of professional mascots. Was it that you were going to go to a mascot camp at one point, or you went to a mascot camp? Like, and who even knew those things existed? But like, what has been the one thing that surprised you the most about what has kind of happened as a result of you becoming the mascot?
Well, what surprised me is that the local mascots for the Lehigh Valley minor league sports reached out to me, and along with Gritty from the Flyers, and Melvin and Slapshot and Ferris and Fifi, even the Philly Fanatic. Like, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like, my high school mascot is with the guys in the big leagues, and I was like, wow, this is a big deal for the community to see their high school mascot with Gritty and Slapshot and Melvin and Ferris and Fifi and Philly Fanatic and the others.
Yeah, it's really cool. Is there something about it that you weren't expecting? Like, you probably had these ideas going into it that like, yeah, I'm gonna, I'll go to the football games and I'll, do the stuff with the running onto the field and I'll high five the kids and we'll hand some stuff out. But was there something that's kind of unexpected, like an unexpected benefit from it that, you've kind of gotten from it?
It made me part of the school without doing any sports, like, and it just brought joy to the crowd, and like the kids, well, most of them would light up and jump up and down and go crazy for the Hornet, and then some of them even volunteer to hand out the swag gear to the crowd, and the student section got a kick out of it, especially my senior year, and all that stuff, and like when after I was done running down the field with the flag at kickoff, I would wave that big old green flag with the E on it in front of the student section, and the student section would erupt with joy in spirit.
And I think that's what I don't think he expected the reactions of the community in the way that in the way that he was welcomed.
Yeah, and it was something that like when it first happened, it was kind of like this like smaller story, and then it's gotten bigger, and you've been in the morning call, I think you did like the picks one time with Keith Groller, and I think you've had some stuff other places too. So like it's kind of taken on a life of its own here, and it's kind of interesting to see where where the Emmaus Hornet will go next year. Like I know where you're going to go, and we'll talk about that in a second, but like what the mascot's going to become and stay. And I know, Andrew, that one of the things that's kind of been interesting through this is that while you've been at LMMS, you have kind of become, what is it? The name is Sting at the middle school, right? Yeah. So you've now become the mascot there too. So why don't you talk a little bit about what being the mascot at the middle school has been like, and kind of keeping it in the mascot family there?
Well, it's been very exciting. A lot of energy has been put out through it. I think it made the LMS pep rallies, which is like one of my main events that I do, very like much more enjoyable. I remember 6th grade, before we didn't have like an established mascot, and the pep rallies, they were exciting, but they kind of got boring after like 2. But I think the mascot keeps it fresh and new and more, just brings a lot of excitement and joy to it.
Now, I know that there's some, we're not 100% sure what's going to happen to the Hornet next year. There are some, things that still need to be ironed out about who's going to be the Hornet and all that different stuff. But Andrew, if the chance presents itself to carry on the family legacy of the Hornet, do you think is that something you want to participate in?
Yes. Yes, very much.
Yes. That is almost a daily conversation here. Andrew is very interested.
I'm very interested. I really want to.
And it's going to be funny to see the personality of the Hornet change, because they are different people. So whoever that person is, which, we know Andrew will be able to be the Hornet, and we're looking forward to being able to have some other people on board with us as well. Andrew has a friend that talks about wanting to be his beekeeper.
Wow, that would be an interesting. We're like expanding the family here. It's sort of like the pork racers at the Iron Pigs. You have Ferris and Fifi, and then you have like all the different surrounding people. So
So if there, things need to be discussed with the pandemic. I know some things are on hold for a little bit, understandably, and once we get discussions taking place, we'll make sure everybody knows. So
since we do focus a lot on 9th grade here on the podcast, obviously. So Zach, if you were to take a look back and kind of think back to that 9th grade year and kind of think like, is there something like, if you're telling, obviously your brother is right next to you, or like any other 8th grader or a current 9th grader, what would you tell them about what would, what kind of tips or strategies or, from your own experience, like what would you tell a ninth grader to kind of do, or, how would you best prepare them to enter Emmaus High School?
I'd tell them to find their niche and get involved in any way, shape or form, because it really helps it really helps bring joy to an Emmaus High School student if they are involved in a club or a sport or the band, orchestra, choir, chorale, anything.
And I really like earlier when you said that you were able to kind of feel like you were a part of the school and you weren't an athlete. I feel like so many times like students think like, man, if I don't play sports, what am I going to do? And you basically created yourself a spot in the school that has kind of now been solidified over the last 3 years. So it's really interesting to kind of look at that progression. And, it even shows students that like maybe the thing that you are interested in is not even at Emmaus High School right now. And maybe you want to create it, or maybe, you want to be the Hornets, the Hornet keeper, or you want to create who knows what people are going to create. But I think hopefully your story, that people kind of, when they see your story or have seen your story, kind of lets people know that there's really no limit to what you can accomplish if you kind of just set yourself to it. And I hope that that's what people take from your story. Andrew, is there anything that, you're looking forward to coming up to the high school? Like, obviously you kind of know some of the things you might be involved with, or like, how has that kind of helped you to get ready to come up to Emmaus High School?
Definitely the layout of the school. I've heard a lot of chit chat when school is still in session about like how everyone's scared to like figure out how, like, where to go for this class, where to go for that class. Zach has definitely helped me figure out the layout of the school, so I won't be late or anything like that.
Anything else that you're kind of, maybe something that maybe Zach, is there anything that you haven't told your brother yet? Like any sort of secret, or like, the pool on the 4th floor yet, or anything that you kind of want to, maybe tell him for the first time here?
Oh boy.
No, I caught you off guard on that one.
You did.
Let's see here. Well, I do know a way to get into the football locker room.
Oh, I don't know if we can have that one out in public. So
Yeah.
I'll have to stop you there. So if you want to know how to get into the football locker room, you will have to find Zach wherever he lives. You'll have to find him and ask him yourself, because we can't put that out. Zach, you know that.
Oh,
We can't have random people running out onto the field.
I'm really sorry about that.
Oh, it's okay, Zach. I'm just messing around with you. But I know that you probably know a lot of secrets of like where they keep things and where things are done, and
Yeah.
all the behind the scenes stuff of Emmaus High School that, that will just be one of those things that you'll get to hold on to and maybe pass down to your brother. And that can be your insider family secret.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Mom, you've kind of had a chance to see Zach for his 4 years, and you also now have a son coming up that's from middle school to high school. So what has the process been like for you, kind of preparing you to kind of know, like, what should you be looking for as a ninth grader? So if you're, talking to the parents out there that are kind of like maybe a little worried, and obviously with the unrest of what's going to happen at the start of the school year aside, but like, what should parents be looking for when their kids go into ninth grade, and kind of how should they be approaching that situation?
When Zach was a freshman, I had kind of kept some tabs on his social media, so that privacy of what he's seeing on his phone or computer really had an impact on his mental health. So you just make sure that you have an open dialogue with your children, and I'm not going to say snoop. That's not what I'm trying to say, but like be aware of what it is they're being exposed to on their media and how that impacts them. But also, just watch for signs of isolation. Like Zach was never up in his room, and suddenly he like would never come out of his room. So that was kind of a red flag for us as well. Yes, it was new and his routine is new and he's up, a whole hour earlier. So you expect them to kind of have that downtime or that middle of the day nap that I'm sure most high schoolers do. But just be aware of their personality changing, because that happened as well. Zach's a happy-go-lucky kind of kid, and when I saw his personality change, I knew that was also something that we needed to address as well.
So, great tips there for just anybody to kind of keep an eye out on. And, like I've kind of referenced a couple of times here, like I think a lot of people have heard seen the triumphant part of the Hornet story, but there was some backstory to it and kind of becoming the Hornet. And, it was a huge part of your transition at the high school. And I'm happy and proud that you guys decided to share part of that story. And I think hopefully when people listen to it, they can kind of understand that, like, even, anyone can be affected by this kind of stuff, and just to make sure that people are on the lookout for all that. But, enough of the sad stuff here. So as we're kind of getting ready to wrap up, I think, recently, Zach, you were just given a couple of different senior awards at the high school. You won the Douglas Jackson Memorial Scholarship that kind of exemplifies, a student that's really involved in the school in lots of different ways. And, you've been really kind of, honored for all the different stuff that you've been doing for the last 4 years. So how has that felt? Like, I know that there's lots of mixed emotions with ending the school year the way that you did, but, knowing that where you came from as a ninth grader and now you're ending as a successful Emmaus High School graduate, what kind of feelings do you have about that right now?
I feel, oh boy.
Yeah, it's been that we've been kind of talking about that here at home. Not that I want to interrupt, but I don't know that there's one word for that. He kind of struggles with trying to figure out what that feeling is. Yeah, that night that he, of the senior awards, that was pretty emotional for us, for a lot of different reasons.
And, it's just one of those things where, like, a lot of times you see the students that are in that scenario and they've been successful all 4 years and it's been easy, but, like, you guys, your whole family has had to be really diligent about, like, getting involved, doing all those things. And like I said, the academics for you have always kind of just been something that's kind of happened. But I think the whole picture, I think the celebration of that award that you won was, like, it wasn't just an academic award. It was like the celebration of, like, the whole entire person that you've been. And hopefully, like, you kind of recognize that and see that as you kind of move forward. So, I wanted to have you on for lots of different reasons. One was kind of like, because you're the Hornet, and that's awesome. But the other reason is I like knowing your whole story. I think it's such a beneficial story for, our community to hear that, like, you didn't just show up your ninth grade year and boom, you're the Hornet. And then you're like this, as you said, celebrity kind of mascot person. You really, like, put a lot of time and effort, and, you grinded to, raise the money for the new costume. You did so much work to kind of make that a reality, that hopefully you're an example for Emmaus High School students, ninth grade and otherwise, to come. And, your brother has some big, I don't know, what are the feet of a Hornet called? Do you know? I was going to say shoes, but I don't.
Feet,
They're not feet. They're not feet. They're
Andrew's like, I should know this.
In the costume, their feet, but
Yeah. We'll have to figure what
I mean, he has shoes. Yeah, he has shoes, so you can say shoes to fill.
Yeah, big shoes to fill. But
yeah.
Andrew, I'm sure you'll come up and you'll make your own mark here at the high school, and, people will kind of, at least they know who you are to start with, but, hopefully I'm sure you'll come up and make your own story as well too. So before we kind of wrap it up, is there anything that any of the three of you kind of wanted to add in or say, or kind of last parting shots for our current freshmen or anyone that's listening, or anything that you wanted to add in?
Sure. I think overall, we are just so incredibly thankful to the community, the Emmaus community, the high school, all of you that helped embrace us, do what we've done for the past 3 years. And we just hope we can continue to bring, that joy as Andrew comes up to the high school. And and yeah, just thank you. Thank you. We say that a lot, how grateful we are, to have this in our lives. Also, Zach, do you want to share about the sales?
Yes. Okay, so you're never going to believe this. I became their mascot, Frankie the Bulldog.
He was asked to be part of the sales mascot team.
So Frankie the Bulldog, and your mom and I had spoke previously, and I think it's really, this kind of brings the whole story full circle here. And that's what I told her, is that I know you started your middle school at Eyre, and Eyre's mascot is the
Bulldog.
And now you became a Hornet, and now you're leaving the Hornet and you're becoming
a bulldog.
A bulldog once again. So I think it's really great. And, Zach is going to go on and study math and education, and, potentially wants to be a math teacher, but, the mascot will continue on, and, I'm sure you'll be visible at their community events and all the different stuff. So if you want to keep seeing Zach, I'm sure you'll have the opportunity in the fall or the winter or whenever they mascot and get to do the other stuff that they get to do. And, if you're looking for Andrew, hopefully you see him in the fall at football or wherever he's going to be, who knows with everything, either sharing that costume or being the Hornet keeper or whatever. And Mom, I'm sure you'll be split between two places. We'll see you all over in the blue and red and the green and gold and all the other stuff.
Yes.
So, everyone, thanks a lot for taking the time out to join us today. We really appreciate it. And hopefully, people, there's a lot of craziness going on right now with, everything that's going on. But I think that your story and your family's story is just so positive and so uplifting. And hopefully, people listen to this and kind of get that from the entire story. So thanks a lot so much for sharing everything that you guys did today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.